Right, first stop on Van Halen Trail 2026. Place I've been wanting to come to for a long time. Lockinawata High School. Okay, so in 1975, Van Halen played here on the steps at Lockinawata High School during lunchtime. And it was all arranged by a young local promoter who was friends with the Van Halens. And he was just out of high school here, but he was at PCC with them at Pasadena Community College. And so he got to know them and loved their band, and he wanted to promote them. But he was trying to put on a show at the nearby Lantermann Auditorium, which we're going to see later. And he needed to kind of tease the shows because nobody in this area, Lockinawata, was that familiar with them. Back in the day, you didn't have, ways of communicating this unless you were going to the backyard parties. So anyway, the gentleman got them here with the help of the principal, and they played a lunchtime show up on those steps. You see those photos back from the 70s. There's a famous photo of that, and you can kind of match up everything that's still here. And so they played a bunch of covers. Students that were out here actually wanted to have an encore because they actually used flash pots and blew stuff up at the end of the performance with their car horns from the Running with the Devil recording. They actually used all that here at Lockinawata High School on that particular performance. So it's kind of a cool story. One I've heard forever, I've known about forever, but never been up here at Lockinawata, which is up by the JPL, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory here at NASA, and not far from the Rose Bowl. Anyway, the Lantermann Auditorium was the show he was promoting for, and so he needed to get everybody in this town familiar with them to get them out to Lantermann for the final show, which turned out to be a big success, and was one of the shows in '75 that helped put Van Halen on the map here in this area in Lockinawata, and of course they were already on the map in Pasadena, not too far from here. The old photos that you see of this spot, okay, it probably looked like a lot of this right here was grassy. You can see this was all grass, so the students were you could tell it was kind of raised, and over on that side is where the photo was taken from. Let me go over this other side where the photo was taken from, the video from there. You can kind of see what it looks like, but that spot is no longer grass, it's steps and walls here. So there's not a way to get the exact height right on that, but I'll try to get over here where it's close, and that would have been somewhere right in here. It's kind of off this direction, maybe even as far as over here. You see that photo, it's pretty much just like this. I'll insert the photo on top of this so you can compare, but it was kind of in this direction they took the photo, and you can see Eddie up there in the band and all that. It's pretty cool. I'm gonna walk up on the steps and show you what it's like from there and close up, but this is the distance roughly that the person was standing when they took the one photo that's in existence that I know of in 1975. Now I'm at the level of the students who were watching Van Halen. They were down here, and you can see them all over in the photo. And we're gonna walk up to where Van Halen was, up here on the steps playing. Kind of a cool little area. It's down in the valley here. It's beautiful behind me. Let me show you what it looks like. That's what it looks like behind me. Going back up here to the steps. You saw Roth up here in the middle, of course, on the steps. And then Ed was off to this side. They were all up here, and you can kind of, in the photo, see this concrete wall going around. And that's kind of a clue, but you can also see the banisters right there from that original photo. And of course, this whole concrete area is pretty much just as it was in 1975, which is amazing, right? So cool. First time I've ever been here to Lockinawata. I know that Chris Holmes was from up here. Of course, Chris was great friends with Eddie, as well as Terry Kilgore. And I hope to have both of them on the podcast soon, and we can talk about this more, and this area and Van Halen. I love to come out and do these videos for you guys. It's like a scavenger hunt. You've heard about it, you kind of know where it's at, and you got to get there and you got to find it, and then you collect the evidence for the scavenger hunt. So here I am in Lockinawata at the famous spot from 1975. Let's go see Lantermann Auditorium and see what we can find there. All right, behind me is Lantermann Auditorium, where the promoter I was just telling you about at Lockinawata High School was promoting the show for Van Halen. This was going to be the final destination, so the lunchtime shows were just, teasers for the students to draw people here to this show at Lantermann Auditorium. So it's pretty cool. I've heard about it for a long time. There's some great pictures of Eddie that I'll insert in a black coat playing here, and another piece of Van Halen history that I've never seen in person, but I've always heard about. Lantermann Auditorium. Fairly large building. Maybe if you get 1,000 people in there, maybe something like that. I'm not sure exactly how many, but look up Daniel Sullivan in his article. Look up Lockinawata High School, Van Halen, Daniel Sullivan. You should be able to find the press article with the long story about this whole process to get them here to Lantermann Auditorium. I'm going to go here and see if it's open. I doubt it's open, but just to see. You never know. Well, not open, but it's Sunday. I should have thought. It's a good day, though, to go to the high school and some other places so that I can get easy access to them and be able to shoot without any, students everywhere and all that kind of thing. So, great day to do it. I'm glad I got it done here at Lantermann Auditorium. More surprises coming. All right, I'm back in Pasadena at 486 Oakland Street, which is where the Van Halens immigrated to in the early 60s into this triplex behind me. Alex Van Halen talks about it in his book. And what I didn't know, though, recently, and why I'm doing this vlog again from this spot, is that another genius, probably the biggest genius that ever lived on planet Earth, lived right up the street here on Oakland, and I had no idea. Of course, it was decades before Eddie Van Halen immigrated here and his family from Holland, but I thought it was an interesting fact and something I didn't know about Pasadena. So let's go check out the other house. All right, just a few blocks, actually almost walking distance from Edward Van Halen's immigration home is this other home right here, formerly the home of Albert Einstein. Can you believe that? When he was working here at Caltech, I believe was what the deal was. Back in 31, there's a photo of Albert Einstein standing about right here-ish with his wife. And I'm going to insert that photo for you to check out. So what are the chances that two geniuses lived on the same street in Pasadena? I thought it was a crazy coincidence that just walking distance from here, about a half mile up the road, was the immigration home of the Van Halens. And around, the early 60s. And Albert Einstein was here in the 30s down the street. Pretty cool. Two geniuses from Pasadena. Totally different worlds, but really cool history and something I wanted to vlog for you guys as an extra whenever I can fit them in. A lot of the Back to the Future was shot at the Gamble House over by the Rose Bowl. So if you're ever over by the Rose Bowl, the Gamble House, check that out and go there and check it out. That's the Doc Brown house from Back to the Future. All right, I'm here on Colorado Boulevard at C&H Surplus. It's no longer a store that's open, but it has a big history here in Pasadena. A lot of people think this is where the bomb came from the Van Halen stage set in '78 that Eddie had his Univox Echo in. My friend Kurt James, who was on the podcast, has a mini version of that he got here. And he actually puts his foot pedals in it to emulate the Van Halen thing. But a lot of stuff came from here. One thing that I've thought about is that if it was Army Navy surplus, they could have gotten jumpsuits here. They could have gotten the hardware here for certain things, that like a strap. I'm trying to think. Tracy G and I talked about the Van Halens before the shows. They would be dressed up in jumpsuits, and they would be acting like they were a crew. And then when they got everything set up, they would take off their jumpsuits, and then they would play the show. And I think the jumpsuit thing kind of evolved from that whole early days thing they were doing. That's what Tracy G said. He witnessed that in the clubs. So anyway, they could have gotten those here. They could have gotten hardware here. There's a piece of hardware that is on the strap that my buddy Louis Costa made from Fairfield Guitar. It's this clamp That's an Army-Navy clamp that he used for one of the straps. So it certainly could have been from here. Most likely, because it would be one of the only places you could get something like that around Pasadena. So there's a lot of little things that tie back to Van Halen that we think came from this store back in the day. Most of all, we think the bomb came from here, but we don't have that in ironclad stone yet. So we'll find out one day. I think that, you know, Rudy Liren would know that answer, and maybe a couple other people. So we're going to try to find that out if that was where it came from. But lots of cool stuff came out of this place, and all the people here in town loved it, and they still talk about it, even though it's no longer open. They did put the sign back up, and it looks really cool, sort of a tribute to this great place in Pasadena. Well, it's twilight, and I'm here at 1881 Los Lunas, Van Halen childhood home again. I've been here, I don't know, 10 times maybe over the last 20 years, every year for the last 5, and it's always cool to see the childhood home. It's in good shape, looks good. The yard's well kept. There's this story that I was told by Tom Broderick, who lives right around the corner here, that the story that Tom told me was that when Eddie came back by here in 2019, close to when he passed, he knocked on the door because the shrubs were really overgrown. He knocked on the door and he said, "You need to cut these shrubs." So Eddie Van Halen got back to his childhood home and instructed him they need to straighten the yard up. Pretty cool, right? That's a great story. And I'm glad Tom told me that about this great place, a great historic place here in Pasadena. Beautiful street, always has been. A lot of people will tell me that it's always been like this. It's never really changed much. So it's kind of a cool thing to see. And right inside that front door, the Van Halen set up and played. You see those pictures with the broken combs back when you see Eddie on the piano and his friends around him and his brother. It's pretty cool stuff. So glad to be back here at Los Lunas on January 25th, actually. My mother's birthday, but also the day before Eddie Van Halen's birthday. So I got to give my mom a call here in a second. But tomorrow I'll come back by on his birthday. Tomorrow I'm going to get together with a lot of Van Halen people around from Pasadena that I love and can't wait to get together with on Eddie's birthday. So we might, I don't know, shoot some video or something. That's it. Childhood home here at 1881 Los Lunas. Looking good. Yard's looking good. Eddie would be proud. He would be knocking on their door, telling them they need to cut the shrubs. Right now, I don't think. Looks pretty good. All right, I'm here in Altadena at the corner of Altadena and Lake. And this used to be where the dance studio was. And we see the famous photos of Edward and his brother. 2605 is the address. It's right here. But I don't know whether this got burnt or they just demolished it. Used to be a photography studio at one point. Looks like it might have gotten burnt in the fire. Possibly. Yeah, charring and stuff. Not sure exactly, but that's all that's left of it right here in Altadena. I just talked about this with Wiley Adams on the 58th episode. And this is where he said it was, and he was right. It was here. Amos Dance Studio is what it was called. And now it's gone. So here's where it is. At least you know it's at Lake. And of course, Altadena Drive, the corner of. Right now, it has a makeshift bunny museum over here. Check this out. I don't know why that came about or how that came about, but it's interesting. Been on the other side of this wall, but the address actually takes me to this spot. So, could have been on that lot, possibly. But there's no more here. So I just leave this behind as a memory of where it used to be. And if you ever want to come back to where it used to be, you'll know where it's at. Again, these are the photos that were taken of Alex and Eddie when they were very young in a dance studio rehearsing with Jim Pusey and Mark Stone. All right, next stop. All right, so what does this house have to do with Van Halen? Well, you might remember it as George McFly's house in Back to the Future. This is the scene where you see this house on the exterior, and then you see George McFly being tortured with Van Halen's music. I saw a video where somebody asked him if that was really him. It was in the airport. And he said, yeah, it was him. And you can absolutely tell from the recording that it's Eddie playing on those tracks. So that's kind of a cool scene. It starts out with this exterior and then goes into George McFly's bedroom. You guys know the scene, but I thought I'd add this to the trail here in Pasadena. It's one of the cool places. The Gamble House is an awesome place to go. Check it out. Another huge connection to Back to the Future here in Pasadena. So there you go. George McFly's house. Rock on. All right, I'm back here at Los Lunas, 1881 Los Lunas. Today is Edward's 71st birthday. It would have been his 71st birthday, January 26th, 2026. He was born in 1955 on this day. And it's not rare, but unusual that I'm here doing the Van Halen Trail on his birthday. So it's kind of cool to be here back at Los Lunas. I want to get over here during the day before I head back to home tomorrow. And I wanted to come over on his birthday because I've never done that before. So it's pretty cool. Beautiful day here in Pasadena. Take a look at the street. It's wild. All the streets are very similar to this. I mean, they've got the great foliage and just gorgeous stuff. Amazing. So there we go. Episode 58, my guest on there, of course, Wiley Adams, talks about winning the lottery, and this is where he did it, on a scratch ticket. He was saying about 10 or 15 years ago, I think is what he was saying, but that's kind of a cool thing that happened here on Allen and Villa at the liquor store. And of course, this is also where the Van Halen scratchings are in the concrete. Let's revisit those right quick before we head out of town. That's fine. Of course, here's a really cool thing. This is Rudy Learian right there. Who I've not interviewed yet. Somebody left some flowers for Ed, looks like, for his birthday. That's cool. I know. Awesome. And there's the one where you have the green over it, the green paint. All right, I'm here at the Pasadena Civic. I know I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again about where they played here at the Civic. The new ballroom and hall here, there used to be a place underneath. Ed called it the pit, and they would have the kids come here and it would go down the subterranean underneath. I believe it was this section of the Civic. Now, this is part of the Civic that you know so well from American Idol or whatever. They never played in this room. But Ed's honored here, so I'm here for his birthday. So we've got to go to the Plaque. If you haven't been here, this is the have-to place to come to see the Plaque, and of course the beautiful Civic Auditorium. Even though they didn't play in this building, there's actually another big ballroom behind it. It's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool place for events and stuff like that. Obviously American Idol's filmed here. Typically I believe it's like the audition phases somewhere into it, but here it is. Eddie Van Halen Plaque on Eddie's birthday. 2026, January 26th, 2026. He's been 71 years old this year. Pretty cool. Same age as George Lynch. George is a little older and still out there doing it. It's amazing, right? I know Ed would still be out there doing it. He'd probably be still touring and doing everything he would always did. Making new products, doing all the great stuff he did. Let's take a closer look at the Plaque. On the back side over here, a couple of people told me they loaded in back in the back here, in the back door that was at ground level, so they didn't have to do any kind of stairs or anything, even though it was subterranean. And they said it was pretty easy loading, actually. Every year when I come to do this Van Halen Trail thing, I do 2 locations almost every time, and that's one, the Civic, and, well, 3. The Civic, Eddie's childhood home, and, of course, David Lee Roth's home. So I'm about to be at David's house here in just a second. We might go down to where the rocks are, by Roth's house, where they took the pictures with Zlozower again, and just do that real quick. All right, well, this is where it all started for me back in 1982 when I saw the interview that David Lee Roth did here at his home on the property here with Jim Ladd. That interview was for Don Kirshner's rock concert. And on that show, they would show the Unchained video. And after David and Jim had their interview, they would intersplice the 1981 videos together through it. And those videos and this interview is what made me be here today, like 50 years later. I'll take you down to where they shot some of the photos with Neil Zlozower. Down at the bottom of the hill down here, there's a spot where they did that. Pretty cool stuff. Now, Neil Zlozower took photos of Ed Halen right around this spot. The motorcycle shots, you can see them on this wall. And then I believe the shot where Ed's sitting is right. All right, we're gonna have an interesting dinner tonight. I know Tom Broderick is coming. Van Halen's first front of house man in Pasadena and on the 78 tour was on my podcast. The legendary Terry Kilgore may be there tonight. Terry ate with me last year. We had a great conversation, so I'm looking forward to seeing him. Gary Putman, who I love so much, is such a great guy and a guest on my show. We had a 2-part interview that was awesome, and all his experiences with Eddie. And I believe we might have some other special guests. Kurt James, another guest on the podcast, is coming, and he might have somebody with him. We'll see what happens. Who might show up? You never know. Where we're going is kind of a relaxed burger bar called The Boat in Pasadena, and I'll do a little video on that when I get there so you can check it out. But remember, there's 2 really great places right together there, The Boat and Northwoods Inn, an awesome steak place. And it's expensive, but it's worth it if you're just coming in to celebrate and you're in town. So check out both of those on Rosemead.